Welcome to Dominate Your Day podcast. This is the podcast that adds value to leaders who want to make a difference in the workplace. We believe each person is unique and has a purpose they can live out every day and make an impact in the world. Here at Dominate Your Day podcast, we hear stories from leaders who have used their unique talents to transform themselves and their companies from the inside out.
Welcome to Dominate Your Day. I am so thrilled to have a special guest with us, and she's also a Gallup CliftonStrengths coach. Her name is Maureen Monte. She's an author, a consultant, and she works with sports and corporate teams. So I'm thrilled that I just got to speak with her a little bit in the green room this morning, but just found out that her new book, Win Like a Girl, is live, and we want to talk about that today. So welcome, Maureen. Welcome to Dominate Your Day.
Thanks, Dana. It's a pleasure to be here. I listened to some of your podcasts, and you do a great job, and your website's lovely. I'm just delighted to be here. I can tell you've got a branding background, marketing and branding. It's well done. You're very clever. You're very clever. You're not just smart, you're clever.
You're very kind, and I am intrigued by you for several reasons. So you have this engineer, IBM background, and then you're working with corporate teams, but you're also working with a lot of sports teams. So how'd that happen, Maureen? Yeah. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, sports, I think, played a big role in my life. I was always an athlete. It was a way of connecting with my father, who passed away when I was 11, right? And so I felt good about myself when I played sports, right? So, and I was always a little bit of an outsider, a little bit of a strange kid to begin with, I think. And then I think it was stranger after my dad died. Meaning I would stand in the same place at recess, like in 6th grade. He died between 5th and 6th grade, I believe. Anyhow, so I was, I never did quite fit in. I have individualization like you, and I didn't belong to any groups. Right? But I did feel comfortable on a sports team, boys or girls, right?
And what did you play? What sports did you play?
I played baseball until as a girl, you couldn't play baseball back then, right? Now you can more. Softball, basketball. I was MVP and captain of my basketball team in high school, and I'm not very tall, but I could shoot from far away, and I was pretty fast, I guess. So that's really where I was at my best. Or felt my best. And I have come to believe that sports success and life success are the same journey. And for example, and this is even more important in today's world, where we've got quiet quitting and some young people that are thinking 9 to 5 is like a really awful, torturous thing to have happen. And not all of them, but some. But when I got my first internship as an engineer, I went into engineering because I have kind of I'm good at math. The guy that hired me saw on my resume that I was captain and MVP, and he's like, I knew you'd be a go-getter, which is what he wanted, right? And so if we can help young women do that, right? Or anybody, boys or girls. I talk all the time with athletes about the competitive advantage they should be communicating in job interviews about being part of a team and being a good teammate and learn to win and lose. And the we of winning, not the me of winning, right? So there's lots of lessons. Long story short, though, when I go into engineering, it was a time when there were not many women in engineering. And I started and ended my career at IBM, and the only female on the team.
Really?
Yes. And, okay, but I don't have a problem with that because I played sports.
Yeah.
Okay? And I didn't care if I was playing against boys or against girls, and it was all good, right? So, but what it did was prepare me for the men that did not care to have me as part of the group. And that would happen in the corporate world. Okay, it would. There's no two ways about it. I remember a guy from England. I was teaching how to program robots at the time. And we had a client who came in to learn how to program a robot, and he was from England. And he squeezed my hand so hard as a way to help me understand I'm not welcome. And it hurt. Wow. Right? And I remember smiling at him, and I refused to flinch. I refused to react. But there are times when you really don't get to argue with clients because you don't like that. But the point being, there were times in my own workspace of my own colleagues or in my own company at IBM where I would punch back If we're going to punch, we're going to punch. And I don't mean physically, but I mean verbally,
Mm.
right? And so you learn how to stand up for yourself. I felt like I learned how to stand up for myself in sports. And I use that, and that's what I believe is the
Did
lesson
you did
for
that
women.
come, if you think back to your childhood and maybe a favorite experience in your childhood, was it playing sports with your dad? Was it what was the experience that helped bring you into the corporate world in a confident way through sports?
I think sports, I was never afraid of making a mistake, which is uncommon in today's world, meaning there are more women afraid to make a mistake in public in playing sports, right? It was a different time. I'm probably wired slightly differently. I was the firstborn. My dad was the chief of police. And I was a little bit of the schoolyard cop.
Mm.
Okay. And for example, I remember, and this is so sad, and particularly today's world where we've got this conflict in the Middle East. And it's the first time I remember I had individualization, frankly, right? That I can go, okay, I remember knowing how that kid felt. And I do not have empathy. It's way low, right? So long story short, I'm in a music class, and the teacher was, I know from his last name now, the teacher was Arab.
Mhm.
Okay, Haddad was his name, I believe. And this is like fifth grade, right? And there was the boy in my music class, and this teacher said to him, "Are you Jewish?"
Mm.
And I remember looking at the boy. First of all, I didn't know what Jewish was.
Mhm.
Okay, didn't even know what it meant. And I looked at him, and I could see how uncomfortable he felt. And he said yes, and he nodded, and nothing else happened. Okay, except the other kids in the room in the music class now know that his first name was Howie, is Jewish. And I don't care. I don't even know what
Yeah.
it means. Okay, we go out to this recess, and somebody's screaming at him, "You're Jewish! You're Jewish!" And I went over and promptly beat the kid up, which was a little bit of a schoolyard. Okay, I sat, he's now on the ground on his back, and I'm got his shoulders down, and I'm like, "You apologize to Howie right now," and he did, and then we're done. But I go home, and I remember I asking my mom, "What's Jewish?" And she's like, "Where'd you hear that word?" And I explained it. And she said, "Well, they're a part of the world or something. It's like being French or
Mhm.
whatever," right? I mean, so I didn't remember what she told me, but I knew I didn't know what it meant, but I knew he didn't deserve whatever he was getting from
Wow.
that, right? So I think there's always been a little bit of well, I have low harmony. I'm combative by nature, and perhaps it was the fact that life was hard, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to fight in every aspect that I can because we were very poor after my dad died, right? So, but I don't know
No,
if
I
that's a
mean, I
helpful
think it's
example or
interesting
not, but
because you know this as a strengths coach that we go back in our childhood and we can find stories of seeing our strengths come out, and you just beautifully explained how your individualization, and for those that don't know the difference between individualization and empathy is feeling what others feel. Individualization is customizing and knowing what they feel. They don't feel what they feel, but they know something's not right. And
right,
I
right.
so I love the fact, and you've got achiever and you've also got um ideation and learner. So you were probably back then using all of those, right? As you were figuring
Yeah.
out, and it was probably your achiever. And I was starting to read your book last night. I got through some of it and it is so good, When Like a Girl, but I have 3 granddaughters and
Oh my God, you're
yeah, and
kidding.
they're 8, 6,
How
and
old?
2.
You look
And,
like, wow, I'm
I
surprised.
see that
You don't look like it.
confidence thing already happening, and I'm like, "What
Yeah,
is going on?" And
right.
and then I have a niece who played soccer, and now her daughters are real heavy in sports, and we have lots of friends whose kids play sports, and I think it's so important, and I love the fact that you're marrying what building teamwork in the corporate life, but also on teams. So, can you talk to us a little
Right.
about? You wrote your first book. What was that, about 10 years ago or 8 years ago? Yeah.
2016
So
is when it
yeah,
was published.
almost 8 years ago. So what prompted you to write that about teamwork, and then where we are today with Win Like a Girl? Talk to us about both of those books.
Yeah. Because that was a journey,
Yeah.
right? And part of me, we all live life the way through our own lens,
Yes.
right? And so I assumed, and I'm jumping ahead
That's
a
fine.
minute, but I'll come back to. I assumed that sport builds confidence, and you hear it all the time. Girls should play sports so that they will build confidence. I do not believe that
Really?
anymore.
Okay.
No,
Explain.
it's a fallacy. Here's what sports or learning to code or learning to become a doctor does. It builds competence
Mm.
at something. They're very good at
Mm-hmm.
something. And I have worked with male athletes and female athletes at the very top levels, college, Olympic, and occasional pro. The competence does not translate to confidence. We have a gap between competence, being really good at something, and confidence, being willing to raise your hand and say, I don't like that, or I'm willing to try out for the lead role in the play, or don't speak to me like that, or. Okay? So saying yes and saying no for women is way harder than men. The boys struggle with it too, particularly since
Mm-hmm.
COVID, or the young men do, but the girls are. And just to give you the Strength Finder data to back it up, and then we'll go back
Yeah.
to why I had to create One Like a Girl. Um, I have the data from 700, and I looked just before we got on air, 748 female athletes, 750. And if sports builds confidence, which it doesn't, um, why where do you think self-assurance comes in then? Out of all 34 strengths, right? From top to bottom, I've got the data of 750 male athletes and 750 female athletes. Where do you think self-assurance comes in? Which is
Mm-hmm.
confidence, right? It's the opposite of self-doubt.
I'm saying low,
And lots of young women have
like
doubt.
really low.
What do you
I think
think?
it's in the lower, like 2% or 3%. I'm guessing.
So you're saying you think only 2 to 3% of female
Yeah.
athletes have it? Yep. It is exactly 2%. Only 15 out of those 750 female athletes have self-assurance in their top bottom.
Wow.
15. And this is why Simone Biles wins her 8th national championship or 8th gold medal here recently in August. And this is in the book. It's in the very back of the book of Win Like a Girl. Interviewed after. Okay, she's got a bazillion. It's like her 39th gold medal, but it's her 8th national championship here in the United States. Interviewed after, and remember she had issues at the
Yes.
Olympics. She had to quit because she had the twisties and couldn't see where she was in the midair, and imagine crashing on your
Yeah.
head, right? So she says afterwards, interviewed after winning, he said, "How you feeling?" And she goes, "Oh, it feels great." And she goes, "And it's so wonderful to know my teammates believe in me, and my coach believes in me, and my family believes in me, and my fans believe in me. Maybe now I can start believing in myself."
Wow.
There's nobody better than Simone Biles. Nobody's got more awards. No one's got more medals. She's the GOAT by any measurement. And she doesn't have self-confidence.
And it's a mindset thing.
It is, but we have to help them get to that where through their own lens of their own
So,
strengths.
how do you do that, Maureen? How do you work with athletes? Say, whether it's a famous person like Simone Biles or just a person just getting into swimming or gymnastics
Right.
or a team. How do you help them with their strengths with that?
So, and this is part of we're just going to hop into Win Like a
Yeah.
Girl. We'll go back to
Yeah.
Destination Unstoppable. Just as the Destination Unstoppable is about helping a boys team win the state championships. I spent 2 hours and 45 minutes with them. We did their strengths. We made a success statement. We refused to let anybody fail. We did a team trust bank, and you're either helping the team or hurting the team. And that's all we did. And 6 weeks later, they had outscored the competition. I don't know, 64 to 16
How
goals.
exciting.
And they won. And the hero of the story, one of the heroes of the story, is the third string goalie that never played a game, but he had harmony. And that boys team, let me tell you, they get wound up over winning and losing. Girls are sad when they lose. Boys are
Mad. Yeah.
furious. Yes, it's a difference. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
that story, but it has a team playbook there on how to do strength finder with teams. That's
So we
useful.
want people
Okay.
to remember
So
that.
true story.
If you want to read that book, if you're managing a team or
Right.
coaching a team, or you're even using that analogy or metaphor when you're working with a corporate team, read that book, right? Destination
Exactly.
Unstoppable.
And I have people from the corporate Destination Unstoppable, The Journey of No Teammate Left
Okay.
Behind, which
And
is a
we'll put
strength
this in the show
statement.
notes.
Okay.
So, okay, now let's move
Yeah, that's
over
fine.
to.
So then I'm like, why don't these women have all this competition? Why do these women do not have all these confidence? And then I switched to when like I start building confidence training program of a framework for girls that I also use with boys now. I just call it Destination Unstoppable. But with the girls, I'm like, oh my God, I have to. So the playbook, the book Destination Unstoppable starts with a foreword by Riley Gaines. My intro, watching a coach scream at a 12-year-old. And then a fictional story, of all things, about a fictional team. And what that allowed me to do was bring in this vast cast of characters that I could combine into a captain or a parent or a coach and an assistant coach. Because I've had all these experiences now with these athletes, and it allowed me to bring the best and worst into a story that feels really real if you are working in the sports world at all. Meaning if you have parents, if you're a parent with kids with sports, if you're a coach, if you work for an athletic director, and if you're an athlete. Kids as young as 11 are enjoying the story of the fictional story.
And I love how you used your ideation probably to create that. I mean,
it was an interesting, it was death by right. This is 4 years in the making.
4 years it took you to get
book.
this book out.
4
Well,
years.
congrats.
And it was nearly the death of me, and I'm not seriously not kidding.
Oh my gosh.
But thank you. And then the book ends with a playbook for parents, for athletes, for coaches. Now this is the true part. How do we do those 13 things that the team makes throughout that journey to build the confidence of the female athletes? Okay, so it's a fictional story followed by a playbook. So it's a little bit odd. It's hard to categorize this book in think 5 dysfunctions of a team, or there are, if there's people in sports listening, there's a guy out there named John Gordon who uses fictional stuff all the time to convey his stuff, right? So it's similar to that with some a little bit of a how-to guide at the end.
I'm loving this. I'm looking at the end and I see all these activities. So can you talk to the activities, kind of how you set this up?
Yeah. So as I began to see both Strength Finder wise, the difference between boys and girls, and I describe it as boys battle as a team to bond as a team. Boys battle as a team to bond as a team. So think of trench warfare, and everybody suddenly is having a great time because this is how they've supported one another, right? So it's this idea that by battling we're bonding. That's the boys' path to victory. The girls' path to victory, and this is why we need different coaching and different ideas, is we bond and then we're willing to battle. So the relationships trump the winning or lead to the winning. In the case of the boys, the winning leads to the relationship.
So can we take a moment and translate that into the workplace?
We can. And by the way, I have sliced and diced all this data of all the because when I left IBM, I worked with some 15,000 people on their strengths. And I have like sales team data and STEM data and manager data, and anyhow, it does translate. It's no different, right? The men come running in with guns blazing, and this is a generalization. There's always the sensitive person or the more introverts, the STEM world, the coding people, for example, they're more introverted, right? But and then the women are constantly worried because the relationships matter more. And this is a challenge with young girls starting like now, your granddaughter, is they care what others think about them. And you cannot give up. A lot of the work in Destination Win Like a Girl is controlling the controllables. So anxiety comes from things you cannot control. And we have a very anxious younger generation. And I don't see it getting better, I see it getting worse. And so if we control the controllables, for example, If you're worried about what other people think of you and you are approval seeking, which women tend to do more than men, right? You have just given up your power to something you cannot control. They may never like you. They may never approve of you. They may never say yes when you say, I want that promotion. So don't give up that power and focus instead on what you can control, which is being likable, being responsible, being a good teammate. Don't be a jerk. Don't say stupid things on social media. This is true across the board, whether you're young or older. So never give up your power of what you seek, and that's very much described in the back of the book as I speak about working with women in the corporate world. For example, a woman that wanted to go into diversity and equity inclusion, she kept saying, well, there's nobody there that looks like me. I'm like, you go first. If you can't go first, you're not ready for the job. And by the way, when you get there, because they may never approve of you, when you get there, do not sit there like a bump on a log. You have things to say. They need and want your perspective. You must speak. And getting women to raise their hand, young women or older women, when they're surrounded by their colleagues is very difficult. They fear looking stupid. They fear that the imagination kicks in. What if happens? The anxiety kicks in. If doesn't exist. If you're saying, what if this happens? If does not exist. Whatever that movie is that you've just created about what might happen, it will never be 100% true. It might be 10%, it might be 20, it might be 30, but it'll never be 100% true. So don't let that be the thing that's your prisoner. One of the exercises in When Like a Girl is escaping the prison, because fear is a prison, holds you prisoner, of Comfort Castle.
Comfort Castle.
You have to be willing to leave. Yeah, you have to leave Comfort Castle. And trouble will find you if you don't.
So true.
So you must learn how to do this. So I've
but
long enough. But
I think that is, I mean, to be able to talk to parents today, to be able to talk to coaches today, to be able to I'm talking to a group of 21 executives today about leadership and about their role in helping. And there's a lot of females right now in the workplace that are engaged, but they're burnt out. And I think the burnout is coming from not speaking the truth and not dealing with
fear,
dealing with conflict in a way that is life-changing or transformational instead of just being passive, right?
And they're counting on you to be passive.
Yes.
That's the trouble, right? That's why this Great Escape from Comfort Castle is so important. And it has life and death implications. And let me give you one example. I worked with a young woman, God bless her, I love her to death, worked with her for 2 years. And she had context futuristic and strategic. So she could create this forward-looking, backward-looking strategic movie about everything that was going to go wrong. Everything. When she tried to speak to a coach about playing soccer, she burst into tears every time. She created a disaster movie of what would happen, and she burst into tears. So they come to me, and we begin to work on it. Great. Here's the challenge. Here's what I began to see was she was worried he wouldn't like her.
The coach wouldn't like her?
She hadn't even gotten to the point. Yeah, she hadn't gotten to the point of verbalizing that. We were having coffee. We were having a coaching session outside a coffee house. And there's an exercise in When Like a Girl called where you create your inner critic, you draw it. Okay. We were having that exercise right then, having that discussion. It was an intense discussion. This man sitting 2 tables away comes over and says, would you like to be sketched? My little Harmony kicks in. I'm giving him the death stare. And I said, what? And he said, would you like to be sketched? I said, no, not nicely, right? He came at it again. I'm like, what part of no do you not understand? No. Okay, I don't want to be sketched. We do not want to be sketched. We're working. So I go back to Jenna, the young lady, and her eyes are
She's like,
ginormous.
what did you just say? You role modeled that.
She had Harmony. She had Harmony in her top 5. And so I said, and I'm grumbling. He starts to sketch over there. I'm like, if he's sketching us, I'm going over there. She's like,
police cop
God.
comes back.
And so I said, no kidding. So long story short, then I thought about her Harmony. I said, Jenna, did what I do just make you uncomfortable? And she goes, oh, could never do that. The moment someone says to me in a coaching situation, I could never do that, we are going to do that. right? Because now we found the gold, right? That's the secret stuff we're hunting for. So I said, well, what would you have done if I wasn't here? And she said, well, I probably would have said yes. And I thought, maybe she wanted to be sketched. So I said, did you want to be sketched? And she said, no, not really. I said, Jenna, we do not say no. And we do not say yes when we mean no. Okay? We do not do that.
Where's
right?
that coming from?
So
why?
That's the approval seeking, right? She didn't want to disappoint anybody, right? And so I can see her wheels turning, right? Because she's got thinking strengths. And she goes, something happened last week, similar. And I said, what was it? And she goes, well, I was buying gum at Target, and this man came up to me outside the store and wanted me to sign a petition. I said, okay. And so far, I'm all right. You know how these people approach you to sign petitions, right? And she goes, I don't even know what it was, but I signed it.
Gosh.
I said, okay. Okay. And it's still so, but then she says, and then he followed me in the store and stalked me for about 5 to 10 minutes demanding money.
Oh.
Now we have a problem. This is the reason we train to leave the comfort castle, because trouble will find you when you do not expect it. So she didn't have the wherewithal to turn on him and say, get off my rear end. She didn't have the wherewithal to go to a cashier and say, this man's following me. So she ran out of the store. I said, Jenna, first of all, I'm glad you told me. That took courage. It really did. 2, never leave the store alone when you're being followed, because you're in more danger out in the parking lot than you are in the store, right? What's the guy going to do surrounded by a bunch of people at Target, right? So, and I said, and Jenna, I do not give a flying pig's rear end if you never score another goal in the history of mankind. You are going to learn how to say no and mean it. You are going to learn how to ask for help when you need it. And we're going to work on these things until the cows come home. She starts to laugh, which is good, because now we're laughing. I'm being all dramatic, right? But that's the win in Win Like a Girl. And she went on to do things she never could have imagined, including giving a speech at my book party, which was November 16th.
Wow. It's like you helped her create a new file in her brain of what she could do.
Absolutely.
Because she didn't have a file to go to. All she had was the file of people pleasing, do whatever.
People pleasing, disaster movies, right?
The Comfort Castle.
Comfort Castle. So in Win Like a Girl, we do one thing a day outside of Comfort Castle, right? Put your brave on, let's go. And so I asked her for an update. What'd you do outside your comfort zone? And she tells me, I went to the car wash alone. I'm like, okay. And that is, we celebrate that like you just won the Olympics. Okay? I do not care what you're afraid of. You did something you were afraid of. That is a ginormous win. I always assumed she was afraid she was going to crash her car. So when she was at my book party, we talked about it. And I said, tell them about the car wash, right? And she explained it. And I said, what were you afraid? And this is the question to ask young people. What are you afraid might happen? Because now you're going to get the movie, because it feels very real inside your head, right? And she said, well, I just was afraid to talk to the people there. That's what prevented her from going through the car wash. And once we began to leave comfort zones and speak to coaches and speak to recruiters and ask questions, that all went away.
So how's she doing in her sports now?
She's great. She made the decision, and I was fascinated by this. She had a scholarship to play for a small college called Kalamazoo College here in Michigan. She'd been on so it's an actual college team. She made the decision, she could never have done this, she said, to apply and go to the University of Michigan, a big school where she wouldn't know anybody except people from her local area. So, and to her credit, she cracks me up, right? So she creates these movies inside her head. And I said, well, why do you think you want to go there? Because part of me is like, do you want to be a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond, right? So she could play club soccer there instead of college soccer at Kalamazoo. And I'm fine with whatever her decision is. But she said, and part of me, she's like, I just can't wait to be inside a really large lecture hall. So whatever that movie of being really large lecture hall thing and being surrounded by 200 people learning at the University of Michigan, somehow that was in her head like this ginormously tremendous attractive thing. So not too long ago, because this is her first semester there, I get a text, the big lecture halls are not my thing.
I'm ready to go be small again. But she knows.
But I love her for
she stepped
Yeah,
out and she experienced that.
she did. She
That
did. And didn't let that be the reason, afraid of that, to not to go to the
that's
smaller school, right? So it's just thrilling. I'm thrilled for the victories
yeah,
like
and
that,
helping
right?
her make
So
those files and create a new opportunity. And now she's going to do that for more things. And hopefully in the workplace, she'll
absolutely.
try things and decide she likes it or she doesn't like it. So in the book and
Exactly.
in these ideas at the back with these activities at the back, can you talk a little bit about the activities just to kind of give our listeners some idea of what the book entails and how they can apply it?
Yeah,
I'm thinking about dads and coaches
right.
and growing these young women to be future leaders in the workplace. So,
Right. No, absolutely. We do have, I instituted the Teen Trust Bank. One of the biggest things that helps with female athletes because they will do mean things to one another, meaner than the boys. The boys will be hard on one another, but girls will go behind their back and stab one another. Okay, it's the reality of the
mm,
situation. Is if there's a Team Trust Bank, that's not allowed. And we all commit to it 100%. That's a big deal because then I can go to you when you post something on social media that's negative about me. Instead of saying you're a real old witch and I'm going to hate you for the rest of my life, I say, Dana, that for me, that was withdrawal from a Team Trust Bank.
mm.
And because you've committed and I've committed, you have to fix that withdrawal. And then it becomes a deposit.
So trust is huge in the workplace and it's huge on
Trust is
teams.
huge in the workplace.
And
It's huge
when
on
they've
teams.
got this lack of emotional intelligence at younger ages or older ages, right? Of how to deal
Yeah,
with conflict when they have a trust bank
right,
and they go against the trust bank, it's up to them to
right.
restore it. Is that what you're saying?
And it's a tool. And I've got parents now having these trust bank deposits and withdrawals discussions with their kids at the
Oh, I
dinner
love
table,
that.
right? And but here's the deal. When we talk about psychological safety, what does that mean? Because I'm perfectly fine with going to war over something,
Hmm.
right? I feel safe. You may not. If we've committed to a trust bank, it's the tool that helps us raise the red flag or to kind of highlight or celebrate. For me, that was a deposit. Thanks so much, Dana.
Mm.
That was awesome. That made me feel great. You gave me a ride home from school the other day, whatever.
Hmm.
So you call out both, right? And that is transformational. That alone is transformational. When we move from that into some of the discussions about fear, it's helping the kids build their own confidence profile, which because what you're afraid of, I'm not,
Right.
right? And telling someone to be more confident is like saying you got to be taller. You just got to be taller. That doesn't
Right.
work. They are where they are. So what does their confidence profile look like? When are they feeling most confident? When are they feeling least? And then what is that story inside their head they're creating?
Hmm.
If I try to do this, whatever this is, this will happen. And just through discussing it, a lot of that goes away. We commit to controlling the controllables, which are we cannot. You can influence how someone likes you, how much someone likes you, but you cannot control it.
Right.
I can be likable, but you cannot control it. I can influence the score, but I cannot control the score. So what are championship behaviors? And this is true in the
Hmm.
workplace. Be a great teammate, work hard, compete hard, and be coachable.
Mm.
You have to learn to accept feedback. Women tend to take feedback personally. And all feedback is good feedback. And if you're giving a speech day and everyone walks out, that's feedback,
Absolutely.
right?
And,
So you embrace it. You're like, okay, let me try that. At least try it, right? And that's the journey for young women is to at least try. And feedback is not fatal. It's not you're a loser. It's feedback.
that's great.
Embrace it, use it, go forward. So, and there's a couple other things, the Great Escape from Comfort Castle and
Um,
the inner critic
yeah.
exercise.
And I
So,
think I could see that this would be powerful not only for the what do you say, like 11 year old is probably the youngest you would work with, or
I think with the Strength Finder, the youngest I worked with a female athlete that was an Olympic going on to an Olympic team. She was 13. They were in their 20s and
mm,
30s. So doing the Strength Finder was very affirming, and she did great. She's mature, and I really didn't know what I was going to meet in terms of 13-year-old, right?
right.
Do I have an immature 30? She was super mature. So, but yeah, I think Strength Finder I start like
Hmm.
13 with the
Yeah.
adult version, And then, but yeah, you can do the kids version, but you can, these are dinners to have over the dinner table. These are conversations to have over the dinner table and or after they play sports. Take away the self-worth of the parent being relying on how that kid performs. That is not your job. Your self-worth is not wrapped up in that child. So instead, focus on what was your favorite part, what did you enjoy most, what do you wish was different. Oh gosh, I sure loved watching you out there,
Mm.
right? That takes courage. You do that stuff, not on the how well they did from a
What
statistics
do what
standpoint,
do you
right?
hope that is an outcome, and you're starting to see since October when you launched? What do you hope is an outcome from this book when you created this 4 years ago and said, "I've got to get this out to the world"? What do you hope is
Yeah,
that you see as an outcome?
I hope it transforms the point of view that confidence and competence are not the same. We have a gap, and we can close that gap because confidence is a muscle that gets stronger with use, but we have to do it on purpose. So don't assume because they're really great athletes, they're confident. That 13-year-old who very quickly went on to be the best ranked person on the team was scared to death what those her teammates were going to think of her if she didn't perform well, right? So the confidence gap. And the good thing about this is I've had 4 years, 5 years since Destination Unstoppable to work with you. I've seen this work over and over and over again because I do workshop after workshop after workshop with these teams, right? But I hope it transforms what most female athletes need most is a strong connection with their coaches, with their family, and with their teammates. And we can strengthen those connections on purpose, right? The trust bank helps, the encouragement helps, and I find female athletes need you to believe in them before they believe in themselves, just like Simone Biles said.
It's just crazy. And you hear that
So
about celebrities, you hear that about famous people that you see them acting and they're amazing on stage and they come off stage and they're feeling inferior and you're like, "What the heck?"
yeah,
So,
right. If you of all people aren't
yeah,
confident, or you've got everything going for
right.
you,
So helping
right?
them.
But that doesn't matter in their minds, right? It's in their minds they don't.
Yeah.
So
So one last story. I
yeah.
know I read in the forward of your book an interesting story about a young swimmer. Um, how did you pick her? How did that happen? Because her story is pretty incredible.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it is, and her name is Riley Gaines, and she's become far more well known now. Um, as a female that had some interesting experiences, I'll just put it that way, with male athletes and male coaches. I I have a problem with the idea that we are under the umbrella of inclusion allowing biological men which are trans women, be part of a locker room.
Mm.
And so, and actually, when a trans woman wins a national championship, the woman that would have been first is second now, and the woman that would have been third is no longer even in it, right? So I have some issues with. I think that this is worth standing up against. No one would.
Mm.
No one would say anything. And I heard the testimony of another woman who was on the same team of the male swimmer, and she had been raped at 16, and now she's in college, swimming, and they were told there is no discussion.
Mm.
Leah Thomas is coming on this
Mm.
team. So Leah Thomas went from 400 and something to number one. Long story short, she wept. I watched her weep because, I don't know, was it 18 times a week she had to change in front of him?
Mm.
And we're talking swimming, right? So Riley Gaines, who's on a different college team altogether, and she said no. She stood up and said, we're not, this isn't fair,
Mm-mm.
right? I don't want, this isn't fair. So what I admire about Riley is she's the only one that stood up to the idea of what the impact this was having on women in the locker room or women in the sports, right? And it isn't so much the issue, although I
Mm-hmm.
care, but meaning it's her willingness to say no. And I'm not agreeing to this. No, I'm not letting that man follow me around the store.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not going to be bullied in the workplace. No, I want that kid to stop sexting me. And this is another
Oh,
real
yeah.
life story from high school girls. And they didn't do it, right? So it's the standing up and saying no, and or standing up and saying yes, I want that job. I want that promotion.
Mm-hmm.
I want this, uh, and then going after it without fear.
Mm-hmm.
And the fear was there. In the forward, she talks about being afraid,
Mm-hmm.
right, of what would happen. But that it's worth fighting for. And you don't have to, your life does not depend on other people's approval. It doesn't. It may be hard if you're disapproved of, and that doesn't feel good. And you know what? Your head won't fall off. So
It,
that's what I'm all about, is her willingness to stand up when no one else would. I think it's remarkable. And I think in the long run, she's going to be
yeah,
admired
and
for
I
it.
think it's just exactly what you've been saying throughout this interview is giving your power away. And instead of stepping forward and saying, this isn't right, and there's
I,
countless examples of that throughout history with women. And I know my mom was,
right.
trying to break through just to be, an executive in the 60s in an ad agency, and all
Yeah,
that she had to go through to get into that position, and how to
really.
and
Mhm.
at 87 she just graduated from college with her degree in film, and she's writing screen. So she faced, and she's my heroine in that she went to college during COVID and faced a lot of fears that any 86-year-old woman could face.
Can you
But she's
imagine?
had that same power since she was fighting through, what she had to fight through as an exec to become an
Sure.
executive back in the day. So if you're out there and you're wanting to grow in your career and you're feeling like you've been people pleasing and you feel like you need a little bit more confidence and you want to just close that gap between competence and confidence, this is your book, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you don't have to be an athlete to read this book and to get
You
this book.
don't. And I enjoy the professional women. A woman who spoke at my, and then we'll stop. A woman who spoke at my party, and I called her up because she's afraid of public speaking. And I said, Jackie, I need you to come up here. And she's like, I'm not coming up there. I'm like, come
Uh-huh.
on. And if you saw her strength, you wouldn't believe her. And if you saw her physically, you wouldn't believe it. But long story short, she got up there and she did do it, right? And I asked her afterwards how did it feel to speak in front of those people, and she said relieved. But the when she sat down, but she said, I saw another book about sports. She's like, sports, sports, sports. Why does this woman keep writing? She's a dear friend. Why does she keep writing about sports? Then she read it, and she had tears in her eyes. And then she went to work and wrote an email that she never would have written. And it's tomorrow. We have to wish her good luck. She is speaking with the very top of the company about what she's raising issues she never would have raised otherwise. She's at a director level. So I'm like, that is ginormous, right? That is a
And you're
big one.
reminding me, Maureen,
So
I did a study of female founders this year. And the number one thing we found is confidence that was lacking.
yes,
And these are people that stepped
right,
out to start their businesses and have done really
right.
well, but they're afraid of, well, what if I get to 1 million? Well, what if I get to, how will I be treated? And they're already creating those stories.
The
So
what
what
if?
if?
The moment we do
Yes.
that, red
Yes.
flag. Yes.
And it's something we all go through, but I think reminding yourself and having these little kind of triggers that we can talk to ourselves about, and how we can role model that for these young women that are growing in their what they feel like is their gift, whether it's sports or as they grow in their
Right.
careers. So I applaud you in what you're doing, and I'm so excited to get this book in the hands of friends of mine that are coaches, that are leaders, that are dads of girls, especially my son-in-law, um, who happens to be an athlete
Yeah.
himself, and really helping them step out and not be afraid.
Not
And
be afraid and let her do it. Let them find that path. This is where strengths is helpful. Those are actually tools for courage because that's your sweet
you
spot,
are so
right?
right. And I like to say that all the time is when you're in your strengths, you're energized, you're confident, and you're more productive.
Mhm.
But people forget, they have these unique talents and they want to compare themselves, right?
Right.
So, oh,
Yeah.
that's so powerful. Maureen, is there anything else as we get ready to close out that I didn't ask you or anything else that you want to share with the audience today. We got it
No.
all.
That was when you asked such
Oh,
excellent
good.
questions. I don't think I have
Well, we
anything
want
else
to make
to
sure
add.
people get
Just
your
go do
book.
it.
So feel
Yeah.
free, you guys, to reach out to Maureen. And how can they find your book? What is the best way for them to find your book?
It's of course on Amazon where
Is.
everything
Yep, and
exists
I'll
these
hold it up
days.
too.
And
Win like a
oh, thank
girl.
you. And Win Like a Girl, coaching female athletes to become confident at the game of life, right? I don't care about the wins. I do not care about the score of the game. I care that you learn how to do some of the things we've talked about today, you being anybody reading the book. But it's also, if you want a signed copy, reach out to me at my website, Maureen@MaureenMonte.com is my email. Or you can visit my website and learn more. And there's a couple of videos there of young women speaking about what they've learned. So that can be fun too if you wish to share it with an athlete or a daughter or see
That's
it for
so
yourself.
awesome. Thank you, Maureen. And thank you. You brought a lot of energy to start my day. So I loved it. So thank you for all your wisdom.
Well, good luck with your
Oh,
next
thank
meeting.
you.
And you do a great
Thank
interview.
you.
You really do. I think you need to just like
Oh,
go
you're
on the
so
radio,
sweet.
girl.
Thank you for your encouragement. Okay. Have a great day.
You're welcome. You too. Thanks.
You have been listening to Dominate Your Day podcast. If you're ready to transform your life and workplace from the inside out, go to danawilliamsco.com and set up a discovery call. We would love to connect with you and equip you with some helpful resources. Thank you for listening today, and please take a moment to subscribe to Dominate Your Day wherever you listen.